Hi, I'm Debbie Brown, and today I'd like to show you how to free motion quilt Starbursts on a crate quilt. Crate quilts are 14 by 20 inch quilts, and I've made my samples from 2-inch squares, 7 across and 10 down. You can make them from scraps, but for filming I've used 2 different shades of gray so that you can see the quilting. The thread I'm using today is Fabulux Royal Robes. It is variegated blue, green, and a rich purple. It is a random dye, which means it is random order, random length of color. I'm not using that thread in the bobbin. I'm going to use Deco Bob Soft Purple. It's going to match the top thread, but it's not going to add any bulk underneath the quilt, and it's going to make beautiful tension and beautiful stitches. I've prepared my machine by putting on the open toe free motion quilting foot, and I've dropped my feed dogs. As I would on a large quilt, I'm starting in the center of my crate quilt so that I am working from the center out. I've made a knot in the batting above the center of my center row of blocks, and I'm going to put my bands on and start quilting. My first stitch is going to be to stitch down into the middle of this first block. I'm aiming for a straight line, but since it's free motion, it's going to be straight-ish, so don't get hung up on the straight part. I've now stitched into the center, and I'm going to make an asterisk. So I'm going to stitch to the left, and back to the center, and to the right, and back to the center. And now I'm going to make a large X over the square. I'm going to go to the top left corner, and the bottom. Now I'm going to go to the top right corner and across to the bottom. This is all really approximate because it's free motion. And if you're not thrilled with how your first star looks, I encourage you to be patient, because once you see them all together, the perfection of each one isn't going to matter as much. So I'm going to stitch down to the center of the next block. I'm going to make the same asterisk, only I'm going to make it smaller. If I made a large one in every square, it would look like a bunch of spider webs. So I'm going to try to play with contrasts. Big star, little star, big star, little star. So here's a little one. And then a big one. You're noticing I'm stopping at the beginning of each star because it gives me time to reposition my hands, to breathe, shake off my shoulders, and to remember what size star I'm making next. Now I have a big one. that I'm at the end of my first star, I'm going to stitch a straight line off into the batting where I can cut my thread. I can make a small knot and cut my thread. And I'm going to use the scissors button on my machine. So this is my first row of stars. And now I'm going to make all of the other rows the same way, making sure that next to a little star, I place a big star, and next to a big star, I place a little one. finished all of the rows to the right of center, I can really see what my pattern is going to look like. I think it looks great. So hopefully as you're trying this, you aren't looking at each individual star and judging yourself harshly for the perfection of it. Mine aren't perfect, but I'm looking at the overall effect and I really like it. Now I'm using a Handy Quilter Stitch 710 today, and it has a nice large opening to the right of the needle. I have room to stitch all the way to keep going in this direction. But if this were a larger quilt, or if you have a smaller machine, you may want to start stitching by turning your quilt upside down, and once again, stitching all of the blocks from the center to the right. that I've finished the entire crate quilt with the big stars and the little stars, it looks great overall. If I look at each individual star, it's a little bit wonky and it's not all centered and the lines weren't retraced perfectly, but overall I really like the big star, little star alternate look on here. I hope you find time to practice this Starburst pattern on a quilt of your own for the animal shelter. This pattern looks great on quilts that aren't for the animal shelter as well. I've used it over all entire quilts, and I've also used it in borders. If the border isn't a checkerboard border, I can draw in chalk lines to give myself this spacing to make my big stars and my little stars and have that go all the way around the quilt evenly. Please visit DebbieBrownQuilts.com to sign up for my newsletter and also to shop for any supplies I've shown in today's video. Take time to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my quilting tutorials. Thanks for visiting.